Hello, this is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates, and as you can see, I'm at the beach. It's actually sort of cold here. I'm in Myrtle Beach, one of my hangouts, and I've been afforded the luxury in 2015 to do a little travel so that I could get away to do some writing. So I've got some good stuff coming at you. It's not what I thought it was. I thought I was going to work on my second book on abandonment issues, but instead I'm actually doing some pretty intensive writing about fear of engulfment. And that video is coming at you next, and it's on my blog. But today in this video I'm going to talk about the top 10 ugly marital fight triggers. If you're having ugly fights as a couple, whether you're married or not, I'll bet you one of these 10 triggers has a lot to do with it. Maybe 4 or 5 of them at once. So, everybody carries baggage, and that baggage comes from our childhood. And enlightened people, interdependent people, have a good vision of what their baggage is and what their buttons are and what tweaks them and what causes them to be overly sensitive and to overreact. So I'm going to talk about some common buttons, if you will, triggers that tend to be at the root cause of a lot of ugly business, a lot of reactivity and fighting. If you're going to have an empathetic, loving, healthy relationship, you got to know your triggers. You got to know your significant other's triggers, and be aware of those in such a way that you don't go blowing stuff up in ugly ways. Much of what I do in therapy sessions is actually to help the protagonists in the room gain insight into their own and their partner's dangerous triggers. And I frequently feel a little bit like I'm on the bomb squad. You don't want to cut the wrong wire. You don't want to say the wrong thing and blow the thing up. I have had my fingers blown off at various times in the middle of a therapy session. But that's what it feels like. It feels like you're deactivating or untriggering a bomb. So off the top of my head, here's 10 of the most prevalent, sensitive, and painful triggers that lead to really ugly, down and dirty, badass marital conflicts. Number 1, of course, is abandonment issues. And those of us who grew up with a distant or abandoning parent or two will almost always have an oversensitivity to either real or imagined backing up of their loved ones. This oversensitivity tends to be easily activated, deeply painful, and potentially explosive. Someone who's projecting their abandonment issues onto their partners can read betrayal into almost anything. I had a recent appointment via Skype, and was working with a couple who have abandonment issues, and the wife, behind me there was a mirror, and I guess in the mirror it shot over to, there was a self-portrait of my daughter Taylor, and she's a very talented artist and also a very beautiful young lady. So we're in the middle of the session, and the wife sort of in an edgy way asked her husband, what are you looking at? And I was like, I don't know what she's talking about, because there's wall behind us. What's going on here? And she had caught a glimpse of the portrait of my daughter in the mirror and wondered if he was off on some mental fantasy, and to her it was real that he was. But he was just as surprised by this seeing something in the mirror as I was. I could tell that he genuinely didn't have a clue and wasn't actually looking, you know, past me into the wall, into the mirror, over to the other wall, into the visage of my daughter. But he, in fact, was just sitting there having a therapy session. That's the kind of ways that abandonment issues can cause us to misperceive things that are going on. And it seems real to us. As this gal looked over to her husband, he clearly was checking out the hot chick in the mirror. There was no question about it. That was her reality. That's what she saw. And if I hadn't been there to sort of vouch for the guy and the genuine surprised look on his face, he certainly, I think, would have been accused of having a wandering eye. And historically, maybe he did. Maybe he does have a wandering eye, but that doesn't mean in every situation at all times he's always checking out chicks, you know. The second trigger for ugly fights, fear of engulfment. It's the very opposite of the very same coin of fear of abandonment. And in families where there was too much control, too much closeness, too much togetherness, a very common trigger is when a partner distances themselves and just turns icy when they feel invaded upon, controlled, intruded upon, judged, manipulated, and there's just a switch that goes on that says, bye-bye, I am not staying and being under your thumb. I'm getting the heck out of here. And it's a knee-jerk transference reaction that it's hard to stop. It just happens. The third trigger, of course, is shame. You know, if you grew up with rage or control, criticism, comparison, favoritism, then you will almost always have a knee-jerk reaction to the critiquing of your partner. You notice that I use the word critiquing, not criticizing. It's a neutral word, theoretically, and actually our partners should be our number one critiquers because they know us the best. And it can really get explosive when one partner sort of throws a rock at the other, and then they're both highly defensive and shame-based and reactive and not listening, and they just want to interrupt each other and talk over each other. It's like a couple of little kids having a fight. Let me talk, let me talk. And one of the hallmarks of maturity and interdependency in a healthy relationship is people listen. You can disagree, but never interrupt. It's disrespectful. You don't have to interrupt and get your point in right then and there. Wait, listen, show some respect. So often, that's what I have to teach couples in therapy, is to listen and to not interrupt. Another trigger is anxiety and chaos. If you grew up in an environment where there was a great deal of chaos and you had very little control, then you'll most likely be triggered in situations where you have very little control. Example would be having a computer problem. You know, ever get tempted to take your laptop, just chuck it out the window because it's froze up or having some kind of computer issue? Being cut off in traffic can lead to a trigger, a little rage burst, road rage. Being around, this is one for me, being around a bunch of little kids, if I'm in a restaurant and sitting there quietly and peacefully, and all of a sudden family with 5 kids sits next to me and all hell breaks loose. Get a little triggered by that, feel out of control, feel chaos. Being trapped on an elevator would be another example. Oh, here's a trigger that often leads to rage, and that is not being heard, which really sort of goes with this rage business that I was mentioning. So if you grew up with parents who seldom truly heard you and listened to you, or seldom asked for your opinion, who discounted what you had to say altogether, then you'll almost always be triggered when speaking to sort of a human brick wall in your adult life. When folks like this aren't heard, they tend to just turn the volume up, and the next thing you know, you're shouting. Here's an obvious one, number 6, obvious trigger: alcohol. Many of my couples have abandonment. The other one has engulfment. They both have shame. One of them has issues around chaos. I mean, you already got all those going for you. Don't get drunk on a Saturday night. You're looking for trouble. You got abandonment and engulfment issues going after each other, and somebody feels out of control, and you both feel defensive, and then you're going to pour alcohol into that. You know, that's like a can of gasoline and a lighter going out on a date in a bad way. Being controlled. If you were overly controlled as a child, then you're consciously going to avoid extremely controlling people. That is, of course, unless you fall in love with them. In order to work on your unresolved childhood control issues, which a lot of codependents do, they say, I'll never pick somebody like my dad, but then this smoking hot guy comes along who's really cool, and you find out, 10 years into the marriage, he's a clone, the exact clone of your father. Here's one: rage is a trigger. If you grew up with a raging parent, then it's very common that you might exhibit a form of post-traumatic stress disorder, with symptoms around anger or rage of any kind. This holds true even if the rage wasn't actually directed at you, or if it was directed at another person in your presence, or if it was directed at an object, it's still damaging to you. Many years ago, about 1990, in our first therapy group at Family Tree, we didn't actually have a group room. We had a waiting room and my little office. That's all we had back in 1990, in the early portion of 1990. And so we held group in an old folks home. There must be a more politically correct name than old folks home, but I'm going with it, I guess. Retirement facility. How about that? And we would sit around the dining room in a circle in chairs. And one day there was just a tiniest little bit of possible conflict in the room. I think I probably initiated it and maybe was challenging somebody on something. They got a little ouchy. And several of the women in the room said that they actually had to dig their fingernails into the arm of their chair to keep from running out of the room, because they knew for a fact that somebody was about ready to get hit. Now, I assure you, nobody was going to get hit in group therapy. Not that I haven't had that impulse through the years, maybe once or twice. We did have one time many years ago, a fella and another fella, they're probably watching this, invite each other to step outside. I wasn't there for that, but let me get back on track. I took a little rabbit trail, that little bunny trail. They thought because there was a little bit of anger that therefore, blows were going to be struck. And to them, somebody was about ready to rage and get hurt and get violent. That's what it felt like. It was a post-traumatic stress reaction. So that was a trigger. So somebody might not be authentic. They might betray themselves and be codependent and not authentic to avoid somebody's rage or the fear of somebody's rage. Another trigger is venting or triangling. If you grew up being vented upon about the negative qualities of one parent by the other parent, or you were otherwise dragged into a three-sided relationship, then you're going to be really turned off by victim-y, venting, triangling, people who try to sort of hold you hostage as they vomit their feelings up about their enemies and their foes in life. I have this particular trigger, surprisingly. My mama used to be quite the venter and the triangler and tried to hold me hostage, which sort of felt like a form of engulfment. So you come in my office and you try to vent and triangle on me, I tell you to stop, and if you continue, we'll make an agreement that the fee for the session is $1,000 for the hour. Generally, people choose to avoid that and quit triangling, but I'm a little ouchy about it, I'll admit. And then the last one is specific childhood wounds. One of my father's minor addiction, not his major ones, was gambling. When I was really little, I have a memory of going to my closet and getting my piggy bank out. And, you know, it must have had 30, 40 bucks in it, and coins probably. And I gave it to my mother because she was crying real loudly, sobbing, after my father had informed her that he had lost his entire paycheck gambling. I've never been to Las Vegas, and I have no interest in doing so, because to me, it's those people in Vegas, those gambler types, that caused me wounds in my childhood. I'm sure there's nobody in Vegas that had anything to do with that paycheck, but I associate them. So I don't want to be in a town that gambling built, which is silly in a way, because you don't have to gamble when you go to Las Vegas. You can go to shows, you can stay in fabulous hotels, you can see the Grand Canyon, but that's a trigger, you know, the little ouchy button I have around gambling. So you can have childhood wounds that trigger anything, say the holidays, a certain date, a song, a person's name. These all can be triggers. So knowledge of your triggers is it's nice, but having deep insight while actually engaged in the fight, or just mere moments before it becomes a fight, that's when it'll really do you some good. Knowledge is okay, but it ain't going to keep you from a fight. It's got to be in your soul. It's got to be in your heart, to where you don't get reactive right off the invitation to be reactive when somebody's pressed your button, and you can just be vulnerable and say, listen, I got to be authentic with you. What you just said, I'm interpreting it in such and such a way because of my childhood wounds. So I just wanted you to be aware of that I may not be, you know, perceiving you, you know, exactly correctly right in this moment. So that requires quite a bit of work on oneself in the context of emotion triggering relationships to reach that level of independent communication. So I encourage you all to grab your sweetie, and instead of going to the movies and getting a big bucket of greasy popcorn and a Diet Coke, use that money to come into therapy and dig deep into your childhood stuff and together we'll build something that's sort of trigger proof. You'll still have triggers, you'll always have triggers. It just doesn't have to blow up into ugly, destructive, divorce causing, marriage destroying combat. So thanks for watching today. If you haven't visited our website, visit familytreecounseling.com. We have just loads of treasures there for free that you can come and participate and download articles. We have blogs, we have links to videos, we have recordings, audio recordings, just all kinds of my books. I have 6 books, one on abandonment issues, one on shame, one on affair recovery, one on male counterdependency, one on marital issues, and one on the basics of recovery. Encourage you to download those and chew them up and digest those. That'll help you a lot. It really will. Also, if you haven't joined our channel at Family Tree Counseling on YouTube, please do so. I forget where we're at. I think we're sneaking up on 2,500 people that have subscribed to our channel. So also, I want to make you aware of, I've got this wonderful new associate, Dr. Amy Dansby, and she has been with us for about 3 weeks now. She's got 5 clients. She is smart. She is well trained. She's been sitting in on basically all of my sessions of anybody who'll let her, whether it be Skype or in person, and she's just a sponge. She's just soaking up everything I have to teach, and she was pretty talented and pretty knowledgeable before she came. So, and she's building her practice, so her fees for a doctorate level person very closely trained by me to get that for 115 bucks, that's a good deal. That's a real good deal. So she was in the other day and she said she had a session that combined what she's learning here with what she already knew, and she just said it was just awesome. So if the budget doesn't really include $175 to see me, then encourage you to give Amy a call or email, and that is on our website right at the top there, familytreecounseling.com. Okay, I got a couple more videos to make. Thank you for watching. God bless.